The maid hesitated at the door of room 348. She had knocked 3 times already, each louder than the last, but the silence inside seemed to swallow the sound. The hallway of the MCM Elegante Hotel in Beaumont, Texas, was unusually still for a Monday morning, just the low hum of the air conditioner and the faint rattle of a housekeeping cart in the distance. Maria Alvarez, 53 and never late for her rounds, pressed her ear against the door. She could hear the soft, steady hiss of a television left on. "Housekeeping," she called again. Nothing. Not even the shuffle of someone reaching for the door. She sighed, checked her clipboard. Room 348 had been occupied by a single guest for the past 3 nights, Mr. Gregory Fultz, age 55, business consultant, credit card on file, quiet and polite. He'd ordered 1 room service dinner, asked for extra towels, and kept mostly to himself. Maria remembered him tipping her $10 the previous day. Nice man, she thought. But the do not disturb sign still hung crookedly on the handle. Hotel policy said to wait until noon before entering, but something about the silence pressed on her nerves. Maria slipped her master key card into the slot. The light turned green. The door clicked open. A rush of cold air escaped. The curtains were drawn, and the glow of the TV flickered across the room like weak lightning. On the screen, a rerun of Jeopardy! Played to an audience of none. The smell hit her next, something metallic, something still. "Senor Fultz," she whispered. He was sitting upright in the armchair beside the bed, head tilted slightly to the right, as if he'd simply dozed off during the show. A half-empty whiskey glass rested on the side table. An untouched room service tray sat on the bed, the steak gone cold and gray. Maria frowned. Something about the scene didn't fit. The posture was too rigid. The stillness too perfect. She moved closer. "Sir?" No response. She took a breath, reached out, and touched his shoulder. Cold. Maria stumbled backward, her hand trembling as she reached for the phone on the nightstand. Her voice cracked as she told the front desk what she'd found. Minutes later, the manager and a local paramedic entered. Within the hour, the hotel lobby was sealed, yellow tape fluttered in the hallway, and the small-town police chief stood scratching his head at the doorway. "Looks natural," said one of the officers, glancing at the body. "Could be a heart attack. Maybe stroke. Could be," the chief muttered. No sign of struggle. No blood. No foul play. He scribbled something on his notepad and nodded toward the TV. "Guess he went watching trivia and never got up." The coroner's van arrived by afternoon. The body was bagged and wheeled out the back exit to avoid guests, who craned their necks from the lobby to catch a glimpse. Room 348 was officially out of order, though the rumor spread within an hour that the man had died of heartbreak. That night, the room was stripped bare, sheets removed, minibar emptied, air freshener sprayed like holy water. Maria stood at the doorway before leaving, murmuring a quiet prayer in Spanish. "May you rest easy, senor." But he wouldn't. 2 days later, at the Jefferson County morgue, Dr. Linda Parnell frowned as she read through the intake report. Male, 55, found unresponsive, presumed cardiac event. The body lay before her, pale and still. Something about his expression unsettled her. People who died naturally often looked peaceful, but his features were locked in a faint grimace, as if startled mid-thought. She began the autopsy methodically. No bruising, no external wounds, no obvious trauma. Heart looked enlarged but not enough to kill him outright. She turned his head slightly to examine the neck, then paused. Just behind the right ear, hidden beneath the hairline, was a small, perfectly round mark. Barely larger than a pencil tip. Parnell leaned closer. The skin around it was darkened, faintly burnt. Her stomach tightened. That wasn't a mole. She reached for her magnifying lamp. Beneath the bright circle of light, the truth shimmered like something obscene, the edge of a small puncture wound, neat and smooth. She picked up her probe and slid it in carefully. The instrument didn't stop until it struck bone. "Jesus," she whispered. She called for her assistant, then began dissecting the skull. Minutes later, when the saw whined to a stop, the metallic glint confirmed her worst suspicion. A bullet, small caliber, lodged cleanly behind the temple. The death certificate she'd been about to sign was suddenly worthless. Parnell stepped back, peeled off her gloves, and stared at the body. Whoever killed Gregory Fultz had done so quietly that even death itself had been fooled. Back at the MCM Elegante, the manager nearly dropped the phone when the coroner called. A bullet, he repeated. Are you saying he was shot? Here. Yes, Dr. Parnell replied, her voice measured. And not from close range. There's no powder burn. Which means the bullet came from somewhere else. He swallowed. Somewhere else? Likely another room. The line went silent. By sunset, detectives were back at the motel with tape measures, flashlights, and a deep sense of disbelief. The guest list was pulled, the hallway closed again. The wall behind the armchair was stripped of its cheap wallpaper, exposing bare drywall. One of the investigators, a young agent named Harris, ran his fingers along the surface, then froze. There, he said. A hole. It was the size of a pen tip, nearly invisible unless you looked from the right angle. He poked through with a pencil. The other end opened directly into room 349. He turned to his partner. Well, he said, half smiling in disbelief, we just found our smoking gun hole. That night, Beaumont's local radio whispered with gossip. A man shot through a hotel wall? By accident? On purpose? Was it a lover's quarrel, a random act, or some elaborate hit? No one knew. But one thing was certain, whoever had pulled the trigger probably didn't even know they'd killed a man, at least, not yet. And room 348, once just another bland Texas hotel room, had just become the most whispered about address in the state. Dr. Linda Parnell stared at the autopsy table long after the body had been zipped back into its bag. Her gloved hands rested on the cold metal as she tried to steady her breathing. She had seen overdoses, drownings, even mutilations, but this was something different. It wasn't just murder, it was precision. A man had been killed cleanly, quietly, and no one, not even the hotel staff, not the police, had noticed. She sat down at her desk, rewrote the death certificate, and crossed out natural causes. Her pen scratched slowly across the page as she printed the new cause of death, gunshot wound to the head, homicide. The word looked obscene on the form, as if it didn't belong to a man found sitting calmly in a hotel chair. When the report reached the Beaumont Police Department, it sent a quiet tremor through the building. Sergeant Donald Holt read the coroner's notes twice, then once again out loud, as if hearing it might make more sense. Shot, through the wall, he muttered. From the next room? His partner, Detective Rowe, leaned back in her chair. You've got to be kidding. A bullet through drywall, insulation, headboard, and still enough velocity to kill? That's a 1 in a million shot. Yeah, well, Holt said, tossing the folder onto the desk, looks like our killer bought the winning ticket. The two officers drove straight to the MCM Elegante that afternoon, trailed by two FBI forensic specialists who'd taken interest in the case's odd physics. Room 348 had been sealed since the discovery. The air inside was faintly stale, the smell of industrial cleaner still sharp. The TV had been unplugged, the sheets stripped, but the armchair remained exactly where Gregory Foltz had died, an eerie memorial of poor coincidence and quiet death. Dr. Parnell met them there, still in her lab coat. Trajectory came from about shoulder height, maybe 5.5 feet off the ground, she said, pointing to the wall behind the chair. It's clean. No angle deviation. That bullet came straight through. The FBI technician knelt, shining a laser pointer through the small hole in the drywall. The red beam cut neatly into the next room, ending just above the headboard of the bed in room 349. Same line, he said. Whoever was in 349 fired a round by accident, or on purpose, and it passed clean through. Holt exhaled. All right. Let's see who had the pleasure of sleeping next door. According to the hotel's records, room 349 had been rented to a man named Clark Halloran, age 42, from Houston. He had checked out the morning after Foltz's death, just before 7 a.m., a few hours before Maria Alvarez found the body. Halloran had paid by company card, Petrotech Consulting Group. Oil industry, Rowe muttered as they scanned his file. You know what that means. Good money, bad decisions. Find out where he went next, Holt said. By evening, they had tracked him to a corporate conference in Dallas. When the detectives called, Halloran answered after the third ring, his voice clipped and calm. Mr. Halloran, Holt began, this is Sergeant Holt with the Beaumont Police. We'd like to ask you a few questions about your stay at the MCM Elegante. Oh? What's this about? There was an incident involving your neighboring room. A pause. The older gentleman? Halloran asked. Room 348? I heard someone was found dead. Natural causes, wasn't it? Not exactly, Holt replied. We've determined it was a gunshot wound. The bullet came from your side of the wall. The silence that followed stretched long enough for Rowe to mouth got him across the desk. When Halloran finally spoke, his voice was tight. That's impossible. I don't own a gun. You've got the wrong guy. Funny, Holt said, because witnesses saw a woman enter your room around midnight that night. Hotel cameras caught her on the elevator. Maybe she brought one? Another pause. I think I should call my lawyer. He hung up. The next morning, the forensic team finished tearing apart room 349. Under the headboard, they found a faint bullet entry mark and powder residue, a whisper of black soot left behind by a discharge. Shot was fired from here, the tech confirmed, tapping the wood. But no shell casing, no gun, nothing else. The hotel manager paled as he watched them dig into the wall. You're tearing down my property, he complained. Rowe turned. Someone tore through more than your wall, sir. Be patient. Behind the drywall, the forensics team recovered a slug fragment buried in insulation. It was .45 caliber, heavy, powerful, and definitely not fired by mistake. But that only made the story stranger. A .45 round should have blasted through both walls with enough force to punch a crater into the next one. Yet the shot had traveled almost surgically, just enough to reach Fultz's skull and stop there. Physics says that shouldn't happen, the FBI specialist muttered. Maybe physics took the night off, Holt said. Back at the department, they built a timeline. 11:47 p.m. security footage shows Gregory Fultz entering his room alone. 12:03 a.m. a woman in a red coat, identified later as Angela Pike, enters room 349. 12:28 a.m., the TV in room 348 flickers as the bullet passes through the wall. 7:02 a.m., Clark Halloran checks out. It wasn't just a freak accident anymore. There was intent, somewhere tangled between those minutes. Maybe Halloran was showing off his gun, Rowe said. Maybe the woman provoked him. He fires one round to scare her, thinks it just went into the wall. Leaves before sunrise. Or, Holt countered, maybe someone wanted Fultz dead, and Halloran's room was just the perfect angle. Both theories felt insane. Both were possible. By Friday, news had leaked. Local man's heart attack found to be murder. Television vans parked outside the hotel, their satellite dishes rising like steel flowers. Guests checked out in a rush. Maria Alvarez, the maid, watched from the lobby window, clutching her rosary. He was so quiet, she murmured to a coworker. He looked like someone who still had things to say. That night, when the hallway lights dimmed, room 348 remained sealed, the air behind the door untouched. Staff swore they heard the faint murmur of a television from inside, though the power had been cut days ago. Whether it was the hum of the air vents or something else, no one dared open that door again. The death certificate had lied once. Now, the walls were starting to tell the truth. And the truth, as Sergeant Holt would soon discover, was going to unravel lives far beyond room 348. By the time the FBI arrived in full force, the MCM Elegante Hotel had turned into a crime scene wrapped in cheap wallpaper. Room 348 and 349 were stripped bare, walls open, carpets pulled, furniture hauled out and labeled. What had once been another anonymous stop for traveling salesmen now pulsed with fluorescent light and questions no one could answer. Special Agent Dana Reeves stood in the hallway with a clipboard and the patience of a woman who had seen too many strange murders and too few logical ones. A man gets shot through a wall, she said flatly. No witnesses, no sound, no mess. What are the odds? Her partner, Agent Cullen, smirked. In Texas? Higher than you'd think. Reeves didn't smile. She stepped into room 349, the shooter's room, and took in the scene. The bed was still half-made, the cheap art crooked, a faint ring from a glass left on the nightstand. The headboard had been removed, exposing the patched hole where the bullet had started its impossible journey. It's too clean, she said finally. Whoever fired that gun either didn't realize it or didn't care. The hotel manager hovered by the door, nervously wiping his palms on his slacks. Are you saying this was deliberate? Reeves didn't answer. She was looking at the minibar. 2 miniature vodka bottles were missing, one half full on the table. Beside it, an ashtray with lipstick on the filter. She crouched down, picked up the stub with tweezers, and turned it toward the light. "Cherry red," she murmured. "Same shade as the woman in the footage." The manager blinked. "Footage?" She gestured toward the hallway. "Your security cameras. The woman who came up here at midnight, Angela Pike. She was wearing red lipstick, red coat. Your cameras caught her entering this room. Then, 25 minutes later, she went into 348. The manager swallowed hard. "Is that normal?" "Only if she's a ghost," Reeves replied dryly. Later that evening, Detective Rowe sat in the interrogation room across from Clark Halloran. He'd flown back from Dallas under subpoena, reluctantly, expensively, and with a lawyer sitting stiffly beside him. Halloran was tall, lean, with a face that looked perpetually unimpressed. He wore his suit like armor and spoke with the slow drawl of a man who knew how to buy time with words. "I didn't shoot anyone," he said calmly for the third time. "I didn't even bring a gun on that trip." Rowe slid a photo across the table, the wall in room 349, the clean bullet hole, the scorch mark. "That came from your side." "I told you," he said, "I heard a pop, but I thought it was the TV next door. Or maybe the air conditioner." "Mr. Halloran, the pop you heard killed a man." His lawyer cleared his throat. "Detective, my client has cooperated. He's voluntarily here." "Voluntarily?" Rowe cut in. "We had to fly 2 agents to Dallas to find you in a hotel bar." The lawyer bristled. Halloran sighed and rubbed his temples. "Look," he said. "There was a woman with me that night. Angela Pike. You've already seen the cameras. We had a few drinks. Talked. That's all." "Talked?" Rowe arched a brow. "You talked from midnight to 12:30 in a locked room, while your neighbor wound up dead?" Halloran's gaze sharpened. "Whatever happened in that room, detective, I swear to God, it wasn't murder." That same evening, Reeves found Angela Pike's address, a modest suburban house on the outskirts of Beaumont. She arrived just as Angela was stepping out of her car, grocery bag in hand, her red coat unmistakable even in the fading light. "Mrs. Pike?" Reeves called. "I'm Special Agent Reeves, FBI." Angela froze, the paper bag trembling slightly. "Is this about Greg?" "Gregory Fultz." "You knew him?" A long pause. Then, softly, "Yes. We were close." Reeves studied her. "You were also in room 349 with Clark Halloran the night he died." Angela's eyes widened just slightly, enough to confirm the truth. "I went to talk to Clark about Greg," she said quickly. "They were co-workers. Greg had been different lately. Drinking more. Paranoid. I just wanted to help." "And you thought midnight in a hotel room was the best time for that talk?" Angela's hand tightened around the grocery bag until it tore, oranges rolling across the driveway. "You wouldn't understand," she said. "Greg and I weren't just co-workers. We." Her voice cracked. Reeves waited, saying nothing. "We were having an affair," Angela finally whispered. "He was married. I thought he was going to tell his wife, but he didn't. Clark found out. He was furious. Said I was destroying Greg's life, his own career. They argued. But I swear, no one fired a gun." Reeves tilted her head. "Then how do you explain the bullet?" Angela's voice dropped to a whisper. "Because I heard it too." The next morning, Angela's statement spread like oil through the investigation. Now there were 3 people tied to the same midnight timeline, each with motive tangled around guilt and lies. Gregory Fultz, the married man. Angela Pike, the lover. Clark Halloran, the coworker, friend, and maybe jealous rival. But something didn't fit. Reeves spent hours going through the forensics report. The bullet was fired from a heavy .45, yet Halloran's fingerprints weren't found on any gun residue. Angela's nails tested clean. And there were no traces of lubricant, powder, or cleaning solvent in the room. "No one fired a gun in there," Cullen said, pacing behind her. "At least, not while they were still in it." "Then when?" she murmured. He shrugged. "Maybe before they checked in." She frowned. "Or after they left." The words hung in the air like dust. 3 days later, maintenance workers began patching the damaged walls of room 349. One of them, a thin, nervous man named Kenny, called the police halfway through his shift. "There's something in the vent," he said, voice shaking. Inside the narrow duct, hidden behind a loose grate, lay a compact pistol wrapped in a hotel towel. A Colt Commander .45. When the forensics team processed it, the serial number came back registered to Officer Daniel Pike, Angela's husband. In one instant, the story turned on itself. Angela wasn't just a grieving mistress. She was the wife of a suspended police officer whose service weapon had killed her lover, through a hotel wall. It wasn't a coincidence anymore. It was a scandal. And in the next room, the room where the gun had been fired, FBI agents began finding even stranger things: traces of hair on the carpet that didn't belong to Halloran, and a partial fingerprint smudged onto the minibar fridge. They ran it through the state database. It matched Daniel Pike. At 2 a.m., Reeves closed her file and leaned back, staring at the crime board littered with photos, timelines, and maps. A thought struck her, quiet but cold: maybe Gregory Foltz wasn't the intended target at all. Maybe the bullet had been meant for Angela Pike, just one wall away. Angela Pike hadn't slept properly in a week. The news vans parked outside her street, the phone that never stopped ringing, the whispers at her church, everything had blended into a single, suffocating hum. Inside her house, the blinds stayed shut. Every time a car passed, she flinched. The face of Gregory Foltz, smiling, confident, forever 55, haunted every closed eye. She'd loved him. She was sure of that. But love had turned toxic the moment her husband found out. When the FBI returned for a formal interview, Angela looked like someone who had aged 10 years overnight. The red coat was gone, she wore a gray cardigan, her hair pulled back, hands trembling as she poured coffee she didn't drink. Agent Dana Reeves set down her recorder and leaned forward. "Mrs. Pike, we need you to start from the beginning. Your husband's gun was found in room 349. Can you tell me how it got there?" Angela's lips parted, but no words came. She stared down at her shaking hands. "He must have followed me," she whispered. "Followed you?" "Yes. Daniel knew about Greg. He found messages on my phone 2 months ago. Said I was embarrassing him, destroying his reputation. He was suspended from the force for misconduct, drinking on duty, and he blamed me. He thought I was making him look weak." Reeves watched her carefully. "So he knew you were meeting Greg?" Angela nodded faintly. "He knew I'd gone to the hotel before. Sometimes Greg and I met there for work or to talk. I didn't think Daniel would actually." Her voice broke. "He said if I ever humiliated him again, he'd make sure no one forgot it." Reeves exchanged a glance with her partner. "Did you tell him you were meeting Clark Halloran that night?" "I didn't. I swear. I didn't even plan to see Clark. He texted me after Greg checked in. Said he wanted to set things straight. I thought he was just looking out for him." "Set things straight about what?" Angela hesitated. Greg had been threatening to report something. About Petrotech. Some accounting issue, money being moved offshore. Clark told me to convince him to stay quiet, that he'd lose his job otherwise. Reeves leaned back slowly. The pieces were starting to slide into place, but not neatly. So Greg had dirt on Clark. Clark calls you. You visit his room. Then, within half an hour, Greg is dead next door. You sure you didn't see or hear anyone else? Angela's eyes flicked up. I heard a knock. Just one. While I was in Clark's room. He went to check, came back pale. Said it was nothing. Did you see who it was? No. But the knock, her brow furrowed. It was sharp. Rhythmic. Like how Daniel knocks when he's angry. By evening, a warrant was issued for Officer Daniel Pike, who had conveniently vanished. His neighbors reported seeing him load a duffel bag into his truck 2 days earlier. He hadn't been home since. Detective Rowe studied the file in disbelief. A cop's service weapon used in a hotel murder, the wife caught in an affair, and a corporate whistleblower as the victim. If you pitched this to Hollywood, they'd tell you to tone it down. Holt, sipping burnt coffee, grunted. Don't give them ideas. The FBI joined the manhunt. Every police department in a 100-mile radius was on alert. Daniel's photograph, square jaw, military haircut, cold blue eyes, was everywhere. Reeves stood over the evidence board, red strings running between photos of the 3 rooms, the 3 players, the 3 lies. We're missing something, she said. Something simple. Cullen frowned. What do you mean? Think about it. Daniel hides his gun in Halloran's vent. Why? Why not take it? Toss it in a river? Maybe he panicked. Or maybe, Reeves said quietly, he wanted us to find it. That same night, a local reporter named Terry Lawson aired an exclusive segment on the murder. Sources close to the investigation suggest the shooter may have been a suspended police officer, he said gravely on camera, and that the victim, Gregory Fultz, was engaged in a romantic relationship with the officer's wife. The story went viral within hours. Angela's name and photo were everywhere. When the segment ended, her phone lit up with texts from unknown numbers. Whore. You ruined a good man. He died because of you. She smashed the phone against the wall and screamed. Then, for the first time, she admitted to herself what she hadn't told the FBI. Daniel hadn't just found her that night. He had called her. Around midnight. Just before the shot. 2 days later, Reeves got a hit. A gas station clerk outside of Livingston recognized Daniel Pike's photo. He'd stopped there the previous evening, paying cash, buying beer and ammunition. The clerk mentioned something else, too. He was muttering about ghosts, the kid said. Said he didn't mean to kill him. Said it was her fault. Reeves felt a chill crawl up her neck. He didn't mean to kill who? The clerk shrugged. Didn't say. Just kept repeating, wrong wall. Meanwhile, Clark Halloran wasn't handling the attention well. Reporters hounded him outside his Houston office, tabloids speculating that the businessman shooter had killed his rival over a woman. He called Reeves at 2 a.m., voice shaking. You have to clear my name, he said. I didn't pull that trigger. We know that now, Reeves said. But you didn't tell us everything, did you? What do you mean? About Petrotech. About what Greg was threatening to expose. There was a long silence. Then, reluctantly, Greg found out the company was laundering money through dummy contracts. I told him to keep quiet until we could fix it, but he went to corporate anyway. He was supposed to meet with an attorney that week. Someone wanted him silenced. Reeves leaned forward in her chair. You think Daniel was hired? No. He wasn't hired. He was used. Back in Beaumont, Angela packed her things. She couldn't take the calls, the cameras, the stares. She left a note on the counter. I never meant for any of this. Tell Greg's family I'm sorry. She drove out of town before sunrise. An hour later, her car was found on the side of Highway 90, engine still running, driver's door wide open. Her purse was on the seat. But Angela was gone. The last dashcam footage from a nearby traffic camera showed her pulling over, and a dark pickup truck pulling up behind her. A silver Ford F-150. Registered to Daniel Pike. When Reeves got the news, she slammed her coffee cup down so hard it shattered. Now we've got a dead man, a missing wife, and a cop on the run, she said. And the only person who knows the truth might already be buried somewhere off the highway. Cullen looked grim. You think he killed her? Reeves didn't answer. She stared at the photo on the board, Angela Pike, in that red coat, smiling faintly. The woman in red, she murmured. Everyone thought she was the problem. Maybe she was the warning. That night, a storm rolled through Beaumont. Thunder rattled the glass as rain hammered the empty parking lot of the MCM Elegante. The staff still avoided the third floor. But the night clerk swore he heard it again, a faint knock coming from behind the door of room 348. 3 times. Sharp. Rhythmic. The same way Daniel Pike used to knock when he was angry. The storm over Beaumont broke just before dawn. Lightning cut across the horizon, illuminating the MCM Elegante like a crime scene caught in divine spotlight. Inside, room 348 remained sealed, the air stale with industrial disinfectant and secrets. Special Agent Dana Reeves stood in the hallway, her coffee gone cold, her mind racing faster than the rain outside. The new forensic report sat heavy in her hands. The bullet that killed Gregory Fultz had done something bullets weren't supposed to do. It had curved. In the sterile glow of the FBI lab, a digital reconstruction played out in slow motion. The round entered room 348 at a shallow angle, passed through the first wall, ricocheted off a metal pipe inside the insulation, and changed course, just enough to hit Fultz behind the ear. The analyst, a young physicist named Dr. Lang, pointed to the simulation on the monitor. It's 1 in a billion, he said. A freak combination of trajectory, angle, and force. If the pipe had been an inch lower, the bullet would have buried itself in the drywall. Reeves frowned. So it was an accident? Lang hesitated. That's the problem. The entry point on the first wall isn't consistent with a random shot. It's deliberate. Almost too deliberate. Whoever pulled the trigger was aiming low and steady, right where someone's head would be if they were sitting. Reeves stared at the glowing red arc on the screen. Then whoever fired knew exactly where Greg was. By midday, the search for Officer Daniel Pike had turned into a statewide manhunt. His abandoned truck had been found 50 miles outside of Livingston, its doors open, the windshield cracked by a single bullet hole from the inside. No body, no note. But the ground told its own story, a set of boot prints leading toward the nearby woods, and a second set, smaller, barefoot. Angela Pike's. Reeves stood at the site hours later, mud clinging to her boots. The woods stretched endless and silent, the rain washing away traces of what had happened. A local sheriff approached. "We found her scarf," he said quietly, holding up the crimson fabric in a plastic evidence bag. But no sign of her. Reeves stared at it. The same red she'd worn the night Greg died. The same shade that marked the cigarette stub in room 349. The woman in red was vanishing, piece by piece. Back in Beaumont, Detective Holt was losing patience with corporate lawyers. Petrotech executives had arrived in suits so crisp they seemed immune to humidity. They denied everything: embezzlement, whistleblower threats, corporate payoffs. But one memo, buried deep in Greg Fultz's recovered laptop, told a different story. It was an internal email from Clark Halloran, marked confidential. "Greg's threatening to leak the audit reports. If he does, Daniel Pike is our solution. He's desperate, angry, and controllable." Holt printed the email and slammed it on Reeves's desk. "There's your hitman. They set him up. Used his rage to take out Fultz." Reeves read the line again and again, the words burning into her mind. "Daniel Pike is our solution." So Clark wasn't a bystander, she said. He was the architect. Exactly. He brings Angela to the hotel. Makes sure Daniel knows she's there. All he has to do is wait for the explosion. But something went wrong, Reeves finished. Daniel shot the wrong wall. Holt nodded grimly. And now the woman who could prove it, Angela, is missing. That evening, Reeves met Halloran again, this time in custody. He looked smaller now, deflated, his arrogance replaced with a sheen of sweat. "I didn't mean for anyone to die," he said, voice trembling. "Greg was going to ruin everything, me, the company, everyone. I told Daniel about the affair. I didn't tell him to kill anyone." "You told him enough," Reeves said coldly. "You gave a jealous, unstable cop the exact coordinates of your problem. Then you sat back and waited." He slammed his fist on the table. "I thought he'd confront her, not pull the trigger?" Reeves snapped. "You set the stage, Mr. Halloran. You just misjudged the direction of the shot." Halloran leaned forward, his eyes wild. "You don't understand. Daniel called me that night. After the shot. He was crying, saying he'd killed the wrong man. Said she was supposed to be there." Reeves froze. What did he mean, she was supposed to be there? "Greg's room," Halloran whispered. "Angela was supposed to meet Greg in 348. But she changed her mind. Went to mine instead." He shot at the sound of her voice through the wall. For a long moment, no one spoke. The hum of the fluorescent light filled the silence like static. Reeves exhaled slowly. He didn't see her. He heard her. Through the wall. Halloran nodded miserably. He thought he was shooting her. Instead, he killed the man she loved. The case should have ended there. Tragic, twisted, and clear enough for the headlines. But fate wasn't finished. 3 nights later, a motel guest staying in the newly renovated room 349 called the front desk in a panic. "Something's wrong," he said. "The TV keeps turning on by itself. I can hear a man talking next door, but no one's in 348. The clerk checked the register. Room 348 hadn't been occupied in months. Still sealed, still unlisted in the booking system. When security went to check, the door to 348 was unlocked. Inside, the air was ice cold. The bed was perfectly made. And on the nightstand sat a single object, a hotel notepad with fresh handwriting. She wasn't supposed to be there. "Forgive me. D.P." Reeves was called in the next morning. The note's ink was still damp. But the forensics team confirmed the door hadn't been opened in weeks. No prints, the tech said. No smudges. Just the writing. She stared at it. The letters were shaky, pressed deep into the paper, as if written by a trembling hand. A hand that shouldn't exist anymore. By the end of the week, rumors were everywhere. Guests claimed to hear tapping on the walls at night, faint sobbing from behind locked doors. The cleaning staff refused to enter 348, swearing the TV would flicker on to static the moment they approached. Maria Alvarez, the same maid who had found Gregory Fultz's body, finally quit. Her last day, she left her master key card on the front desk with a note that simply read, "The wall still remembers." Reeves stood one last time in the room, the note sealed in evidence plastic. Rain drummed against the window. The case was technically solved. Daniel Pike, dead, presumed suicide. Angela Pike, missing, presumed murdered. Clark Halloran, charged with conspiracy. Petrotech, under investigation. But none of it felt like justice. She glanced at the wall between 348 and 349. The maintenance crew had repainted it, smoothed it over until there was no trace of the hole. But under the fresh white paint, she could almost feel the vibration, the faint echo of the shot that had crossed more than drywall. A sound that had carried rage, regret, and a lifetime of bad decisions through 1 inch of plaster. As she left, she switched off the light. The room fell into darkness. A moment later, the television flickered on by itself. And from behind the wall came a voice, soft, low, and unmistakably male. Wrong wall. The MCM Elegante wasn't supposed to have a past. It was the kind of mid-tier Texas motel that offered free breakfast, clean sheets, and anonymity. The kind of place people stopped in, not stayed in. But ever since the death in room 348, it had become a magnet for whispered rumors and late-night podcasts. Paranormal investigators sneaked in with infrared cameras. Reporters camped out in the parking lot. Guests requested rooms away from the 3rd floor. The management, desperate to save the hotel's reputation, had hired a private security firm to keep curiosity seekers away. But even their guards refused to work the overnight shift alone. Because at 3:17 a.m. every night, without fail, the power flickered, just once. Always at the same time Gregory Fultz's heart had stopped. Agent Dana Reeves had stopped believing in coincidences. It had been 3 weeks since the motel reopened that cursed floor, and the FBI had officially closed the investigation. The file sat on her desk, marked case resolved. But Reeves couldn't bring herself to file it away. Something about it gnawed at her. The trajectory, the notes, the missing body. And the fact that Daniel Pike's DNA had never been found in room 349, or anywhere else in the motel. She leaned back in her chair, tapping the edge of the case file with a pen. "People don't just vanish," she muttered. Detective Holt, sitting across from her, smirked. "In this case, maybe they do. Man shoots through a wall, freaks out, runs off into the swamp. Gators take care of the rest." "Gators don't write apologies on motel stationery," Reeves said flatly. Holt exhaled through his nose. "You still think that note was real?" "I think it was recent. Too recent. Ink analysis said it was less than 48 hours old. So unless our dead cop came back to practice his handwriting, someone else was here." "Exactly." That afternoon, Reeves paid a visit to the motel manager, Tom Kessler, a nervous man with sweat stains blooming under his collar. "I already told the police everything," he said, fiddling with his keys. "Then tell me again," Reeves replied. "Who had access to the 3rd floor last week?" "No one, ma'am. Not since the renovations. We only opened it for one night. The guest in room 349, Mr. Lancer. Checked in Tuesday, checked out Wednesday morning." Reeves raised a brow. "Lancer? Real name?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Paid cash. Said he was traveling through. Left early. Can I see the security footage?" Kessler hesitated. "That's the thing, Agent. The system glitched that night. Power went out for 6 minutes. Whole segment's gone." "Convenient," she said. He swallowed. "You don't understand. This place, it's not right anymore. After what happened, it's like it remembers. Lights go off, locks click by themselves. Last week the laundry door opened on its own, no one inside." Reeves stared at him. "Ghosts aren't real, Mr. Kessler. People are. Someone wanted you to believe that." He didn't answer. But his eyes darted toward the elevator, toward the third floor, like he wanted to say more but didn't dare. That night, Reeves returned to the motel alone. The clerk on duty looked half asleep, startled when she flashed her badge. "You're here about room 348? "I'm here to finish what your boss is too scared to," she said. She took the elevator up. The air changed instantly, heavier, stiller. The corridor was empty, carpet faded and smelling faintly of bleach. Room 348 stood at the end, its brass numbers dulled, its door sealed with a strip of police tape. Next door, room 349 was unlocked. She stepped inside. Everything was spotless, eerily so. The bed was made, the bathroom scrubbed. Only one thing looked out of place, a faint scuff on the floor, by the wall they'd once cut open to trace the bullet. Reeves crouched down. The scuff looked like it had been made by a boot heel. Recently. She reached for her flashlight and angled it along the baseboard. The light caught a tiny reflection, metallic, embedded in the seam of the wall. She used a pen to pry it loose. A button. "Police issue. Pike," she whispered. A soft click behind her made her freeze. The TV had turned on. Static hissed through the silence. On the screen, faint shapes flickered, colors bleeding, no picture, just white noise pulsing like a heartbeat. Reeves stepped closer, every instinct screaming at her to leave. The static seemed to hum louder, distorting into half-formed words. Then, clear as glass. "She's not gone." The sound sliced through her like ice. She switched the set off, heart pounding. The reflection in the black screen stared back, her own face pale, eyes wide. But for a split second, she swore there was another face behind hers. Angela Pike's. The next morning, Reeves ordered a full digital sweep. She convinced the lab to re-examine all call records, even those previously dismissed as noise. One number kept reappearing, a burner cell that had pinged off towers near both the motel and the site where Daniel's truck was found. The line was still active. They traced it to a prepaid phone purchased in Lufkin, by a woman using the name and Porter. Angela Pike's middle name was Ann. 2 days later, the phone went live again, briefly. A call placed to Clark Halloran's lawyer. Reeves intercepted the transcript. It was only 6 seconds long. A woman's voice whispered, "Tell him I forgive him. But he'll never sleep again." Then the line went dead. That same night, Clark Halloran woke in his cell to the sound of tapping. 3 short knocks, steady and deliberate. He shouted for the guard. No one answered. When the lights flickered, he saw something scratched into the paint above his bed. Wrong wall. He screamed until morning. By now, the case had taken on a life of its own. Internet sleuths claimed Angela was alive, haunting the men who betrayed her. Paranormal vloggers camped near the motel, chasing the ghost of 348. One conspiracy site suggested Petrotech staged the haunting to bury the corporate scandal. But inside the FBI office, Reeves had her own theory, quiet, dangerous, and one she could never put on paper. Daniel Pike might not have killed himself. Angela might not be dead. And someone, maybe both, was still out there. The final piece came from an unexpected place, a retired plumber who had worked the motel's renovations. He arrived unannounced, clutching an old floor plan. "They paid me to patch that wall," he said. "After the shooting. Told me not to look too close. But I saw something." Reeves leaned forward. "What did you see?" He unrolled the plan. "There's a hollow space between 348 and 349. Not just insulation. A hidden maintenance duct. Big enough for a person to crawl through." Her pulse quickened. "A crawl space?" He nodded. "Sealed off in '09, but the panel's still there, behind the vent in 349. That night, Reeves went back one last time. She pried open the vent. Dust billowed out, thick and gray. Her flashlight revealed a narrow gap, just wide enough for someone thin to slip through. And there, half buried in dust, was a phone. Burnt, cracked, but still recognizable. She turned it over. The engraving on the case read, AP. Angela Pike. Inside the crawl space, a single word had been etched into the drywall. Not scratched, but carved, angrily, deeply. "Listen." As she climbed back out, her radio crackled. Holt's voice came through, strained. "Reeves, you need to see this. Turn on channel 4. She grabbed the motel remote, flicked it on. The news anchor's voice was grave. Breaking tonight, former Petrotech executive Clark Halloran found dead in his cell. Cause of death undetermined. Investigators report signs of struggle, but no forced entry. The words "wrong wall" were discovered written on the ceiling above his bed. Reeves stood frozen, staring at the screen. The TV flickered again, then glitched, just for a second, showing static and what looked like the faint outline of a woman's silhouette in red. The same red as the scarf. The same red that haunted every inch of that motel. Outside, thunder rumbled. And somewhere, between the walls of 348 and 349, something moved, quietly, rhythmically. 3 knocks. Then silence. The morning after Clark Halloran's death, the FBI field office in Houston buzzed like a hornet's nest. No one had expected him to die. Not inside federal custody, not in a cell under constant surveillance. Yet somehow, the camera feed for Halloran's block had gone dark for 8 minutes. 8 minutes. The same length of time the motel's cameras had failed when Mr. Lancer checked in. Agent Dana Reeves walked down the hallway toward the evidence room, clutching a steaming mug she hadn't touched. Her eyes were ringed with sleeplessness. She'd spent the night rereading her own reports, looking for what she'd missed. Something connected Halloran's death to that room. She could feel it in her bones. When she reached the secured evidence locker, the clerk gave her a wary look. "Morning, Agent Reeves. You here for the Pike file?" "Yeah. Case #1073B. I want the original report." He typed into the terminal, frowned, then typed again. "That's strange," he muttered. "The file's not here." Reeves set down her coffee. "What do you mean it's not here?" "I mean the digital record's gone. Whole chain of custody log wiped. Paper copies missing too." She froze. "Who had access?" "Just you. And Agent Holt." Reeves' stomach dropped. She found Holt in the break room, pouring himself another cup of sludge-brown coffee. He looked exhausted, unshaven. "Did you pull the Pike file?" she demanded. He blinked. "No." "Why?" "It's gone. Entire record." He cursed softly. "You think Petrotech has got someone inside the bureau?" "I think someone wants this case erased," she said. "First the footage, now the files. It's not just a coincidence anymore." He rubbed his temple. "Reeves, listen, maybe it's time to walk away. Halloran's dead. Pike's gone. Angela's either in Mexico or in the ground. The Bureau wants it buried." "And what about the people who made it happen?" she shot back. "Petrotech still walks. You saw those audit numbers. Millions vanished offshore." "Those numbers weren't ours to find," Holt said quietly. "They were classified. This isn't just corporate fraud, it's federal." That night, long after the office had emptied, Reeves stayed behind. She opened the Bureau's secure archive, her login still worked, and began cross-referencing Petrotech with government contracts. It didn't take long. A black-budget defense project, codenamed SpectreNet. Officially, it was a communications security program. Unofficially, it linked Petrotech to covert data channels used by multiple agencies. The project's subcontractor? Halloran Consulting. She scrolled further and stopped cold. Another familiar name appeared in a redacted memo, Detective Daniel Pike, listed as a local security asset. "What the hell?" she whispered. If this was true, Daniel hadn't just been an angry husband with a gun. He'd been working off books, monitoring whistleblowers like Fultz. Maybe that's why he'd been suspended. Maybe the suspension had been fake. And if Halloran had ordered Pike to silence Greg Fultz, that meant the murder wasn't about jealousy. It was cleanup. Reeves printed the memo and slid it into her briefcase. As she locked up, her phone buzzed with a restricted number. She hesitated, then answered. A woman's voice, soft, shaky. "Agent Reeves?" Her throat tightened. "Who is this?" "You're looking for me." The air left her lungs. "Angela? You need to stop digging. They'll come for you next." "Where are you?" Reeves said quickly. "I can protect you. We can bring them down." "You can't protect anyone. You don't understand what's inside that room. He was never supposed to die there." "Then tell me what happened." "They used him. All of us. Greg found something, SpectreNet. He thought he could expose it. They planted the story, the affair, everything. Daniel was bait. And when he pulled the trigger, he wasn't even aiming at Greg." Reeves' hand trembled. Then who was he aiming at? Me. Static hissed. Angela? He missed. But they didn't. The line went dead. Holt found her an hour later, still staring at the phone. You look like you've seen a ghost, he said. Maybe I have, she murmured. The next morning, Reeves was called to the assistant director's office. He sat behind his mahogany desk, the Pike case file on the table, back where it belonged. You were told to leave this alone, he said flatly. Reeves' heart pounded. Sir, someone deleted the files. Someone from inside. He cut her off. The case is over. Halloran acted alone. Official cause of death, suicide. Petrotech is cooperating fully. That's the narrative. Sir, with respect, that's a lie. Agent Reeves. His tone sharpened. Drop it. She stared at him. You're protecting them. I'm protecting you. Outside his office, Holt waited by the elevator, eyes downcast. He told me they're transferring you. Washington. Effective immediately. Reeves exhaled. They're burying it. They're burying you, he said softly. That night, she packed her files into a single box. Before sealing it, she slipped the SpectreNet memo into her coat pocket. Something about Angela's voice still echoed in her mind, the fear, the warning. She drove to the motel one last time. Rain sheeted down across the parking lot, headlights bleeding through puddles like molten gold. The clerk barely looked up when she entered. Still haunted? Reeves asked. He laughed nervously. Haunted, cursed, take your pick. She climbed to the third floor. The air felt colder again, as if the walls themselves remembered. In room 348, the lock clicked open with her old master key. The room was just as before, sterile, empty, silent. But on the nightstand, there was something new, a USB drive, small and black, with a yellow sticky note. The note read, You wanted the truth. A. Back in her car, Reeves plugged it into her laptop. Files appeared, videos, call logs, encrypted documents. One stood out, a folder named The Wall. She clicked it open. The first video showed security footage, unedited, uncut, from the motel on the night of the murder. Not the official version. The real one. At 10:54 p.m., Daniel Pike entered room 349, gun in hand. But he wasn't alone. Another man followed, someone Reeves didn't recognize at first. Tall. Military haircut. Black jacket with a Petrotech badge. He pointed toward the wall, said something inaudible. Daniel raised the gun, hesitated. The man nodded. Daniel fired. The man smiled, pocketed something, and walked out. Reeves froze the frame, zoomed in on his face. Her blood ran cold. She knew him. Assistant Director Henderson. Her laptop screen flickered. Static crackled. Then a new file auto-opened, a voice recording dated 3 days prior. Male voice, tense, whispering, If you get this, it's because they found me. They're watching the bureau. The truth's in the wall. Room 348 isn't haunted, it's wired. It's all been a cover. Female voice, Daniel, just tell them the truth. Male voice, I can't. It's not the wall they should fear. It's what's behind it. Then a gunshot. Reeves sat frozen, staring at the screen as rain pounded against the windshield. Behind the wall. She looked up toward the motel, toward that cursed stretch of plaster between 348 and 349. And for the first time, she wondered if the haunting wasn't supernatural at all, but surveillance. At 3:17 a.m., as she sat alone in her car, the motel lights flickered once. The same time, every night. Her laptop pinged with a new message. No sender. No subject. Just one line of text. You're next. The night outside the MCM Elegante was drowned in thunder. Rain lashed the asphalt like punishment. The wind moaned through the neon sign, which flickered between letters, MC Elegant, the M forever half dead, like the place itself. Inside her car, Agent Dana Reeves sat frozen, the anonymous email still glowing on her laptop. You're next. Her pulse hammered. She looked toward the third floor, the windows black except one. Room 348. The only light in the building. She didn't wait for backup. She didn't even radio in. Every logical part of her screamed not to go in, but logic had stopped mattering weeks ago. As she entered the lobby, the night clerk looked up, startled. Ma'am. Don't, she said, flashing her badge. Go home. Lock the doors. He hesitated. "You're not supposed to. Now." The tone in her voice left no room for argument. She took the elevator. The ride up was slow, humming with electricity. The old fluorescent light above her flickered. The moment the doors slid open, the air changed, colder, stiller, as if the hallway itself was holding its breath. Room 348's door was ajar. A soft light flickered from inside. Her gun drawn, Reeves stepped in. The room was empty. No signs of life. The lamp on the nightstand glowed weakly, casting long shadows that stretched toward the wall between 348 and 349. The same wall where Gregory Fultz had died. Only now, the plaster was different, freshly patched in the center, a small rectangle just wide enough to hide something behind it. She ran her hand across it. The paint was dry but brittle. Someone had sealed it recently. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. "Reeves." A woman's whisper came through, calm, almost gentle. "You found it. Angela?" Reeves whispered. "Don't open the wall." "Why?" "Because you won't like what's inside." "Where are you?" "Close. Watching." "Angela, I can help you." "No one can. You're standing in the middle of their graveyard." The line cut out. Reeves holstered her weapon, grabbed the motel's metal coat hook, and began chipping away at the plaster. The brittle paint cracked easily, revealing a hollow space behind. Her flashlight beam caught metal. A black box. Wires. She leaned closer. It wasn't a maintenance duct, it was a surveillance hub. Inside the wall, cameras had been hidden, tiny, surgical, the kind used in government operations. They were pointed through pinholes in the plaster, aimed directly at the bed in both 348 and 349. Every room. Every guest. Watched. Recorded. She reached in and found a stack of old hard drives, labeled in red marker. Fultz _10-12. Pike _10-13. Halloran _test. Her breath hitched. "Good God," she whispered. They were never covering up a murder. They were covering up this. Suddenly, a noise, a creak from behind her. She spun, gun raised. A man stood in the doorway. Dripping wet. Eyes glassy. Daniel Pike. Reeves froze. "You're supposed to be dead." He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. That's what they wanted. He stepped inside, his boots squelching water onto the carpet. "I tried to tell them. Tried to stop it. But they made me the villain." Reeves kept her weapon steady. "You killed Fultz." He shook his head slowly. "No. I killed a ghost." "What does that mean?" He pointed toward the wall. "You think you're the first one to look behind that?" "What's behind it, Pike?" He took a step closer. "The truth. And the truth isn't just recorded, it's alive." The lights flickered. The TV crackled on by itself, static filling the room. Then a grainy image appeared, Angela Pike, sitting on the bed, hands folded, eyes hollow. Reeves stared in disbelief. The timestamp read live. "Angela," she whispered. "Where are you?" Pike's expression changed. He looked almost tender. "She's been here all along." Then, from the static, Angela's voice came through, not from the TV, but from behind the wall. "He's telling the truth." Reeves turned toward the plaster. "Angela, talk to me. What did they do to you?" "They made me disappear." "Who?" "Petrotech. The Bureau. Everyone. They used the motel to spy on corporate deals, political liaisons. Greg found out. I was the distraction, the bait. Daniel was the cleanup." Reeves' hands shook. "They wired the rooms to blackmail their own people." "Yes. And when Greg found proof, they framed us all. They turned our love into their cover story." Reeves swallowed hard. "Angela, we can expose them. I have the drives. Then run. Before they do to you what they did to me." "Angela, what did they do to you?" Silence. Then, faintly, "Look closer." Reeves turned the flashlight back toward the hollow. Beneath the drives was something else, something wrapped in faded red fabric. She pulled it out. It wasn't a scarf. It was a woman's arm, skeletal, perfectly preserved by the sealed space. A gold wedding ring still clung to the bone. Reeves staggered back, breath caught in her throat. Angela Pike had never escaped. She had been inside the wall the entire time. Daniel's voice broke the silence. "They told me to dispose of her. Said she was a liability. But I couldn't bury her. So I put her here. Where she could still listen. Where she could still warn them. His eyes glisten with tears. Every time the lights flickered, that was her. Every knock, every whisper, it was her. Reeves lowered her gun, her voice trembling. You buried your wife behind the wall that killed her lover. He nodded slowly. And I've been hearing her ever since. A thunderclap shook the room. The TV flared again, Angela's face filling the screen, expression calm, almost peaceful. It's time to finish it, Daniel. He smiled faintly, tears running down his face. I know. Before Reeves could react, he lifted the gun to his temple and pulled the trigger. The shot echoed through both rooms, just as it had that first night. Reeves fell to her knees, the gun clattering to the carpet. Smoke curled upward. The TV went dark. When she looked up again, the light in the room was gone. Only the faint hum of static remained. She stared at the wall, the same wall that had swallowed 3 lives, a scandal, and a nation's secrets. Then, almost tenderly, she whispered, "It's over." But it wasn't. Because as she turned to leave, her phone vibrated. A new message. From Angela's number. Thank you for listening. She looked back at the wall. The paint where she'd chipped away was slowly cracking, spiderwebbing outward, as if something behind it was breathing. Days later, the motel was condemned. The FBI confiscated everything, including the drives. Officially, the case was closed again, classified under domestic counterintelligence. Petrotech rebranded under a new name. The assistant director retired quietly. And Dana Reeves was reassigned to a desk job in Washington, D.C., her security clearance revoked. But sometimes, late at night, when her office lights flickered at exactly 3:17 a.m., she'd glance at the reflection in her monitor and swear she saw a figure in red standing just behind her. Watching. Listening. Epilogue. 2 years later, a construction crew began demolishing the old MCM Elegante. When they tore down the section containing rooms 348 and 349, they found a single intact wall panel, untouched by rot or fire. Etched into the plaster were 3 words. Wrong wall again.